Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk, our podcast here at Absolute Trust Counsel. We do estate planning at Absolute Trust Counsel, and we also do special needs planning, which is, I guess, if you will, a subspecies of estate planning. I think it's important for our audience to understand that special needs planning is about so much more than just legal documents. There are many different kinds of special needs families, of course, but if we look at just one common scenario, parents who are planning for a child who's disabled, not going to be able to support themselves or take care of themselves when they grow up, or maybe they are already grown up and the parents are trying to do a plan. Um, what the parents are also planning for, aside from just legal documents, is really they are trying to come up with a plan to replace themselves in their child's life. None of us is going to live forever. It doesn't matter what your diet and exercise regime is, it just will end at some point. And so today we're going to be talking about some of the other aspects of special needs planning besides just the legal documents. That's what we do, but we're going to be talking to my guest, Ann Kerner. She is the CEO and founder of National Care Advisors. National Care Advisors is owned and staffed by nursing professionals. It was founded in 2008 to provide consulting services for attorneys, for financial planners, and for trustees who support individuals with complex care needs, and of course, their families. As a result of Ann's work with many national corporations, Ann has extensive business knowledge of case management, utilization review, third-party payers, workers' comp, private insurance companies, and government resources. She really knows everything. she probably knows the law as well as I do as well, but I'm not going to grill her on that. Ann received her Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree in 1981. That's brave. From Russell Sage College in Troy, New York. I never say the year I graduated anymore. She began her nursing practice as a public health nurse in New York and then continued that practice with the City of Columbus Health Department. And now here she is, the owner of National Care Advisors. And we are so grateful to have her here today. Thank you, Ann, for being here.
Thank you, Kirsten. I really appreciate that kind introduction. I figure I might as well own the year I graduated from college because it's kind of inherent to who we are at National Care Advisors and the expertise that we've accumulated underneath that banner.
That's a very valid point. You can't do the job that you do without a lot of experience. You just can't.
Absolutely. And especially with lots of families and lots of very diverse situations.
Right.
We like to say at National Care Advisors that every family has a unique situation. It's not simple enough to just talk about a given diagnosis or disability or where they live or their financial situation or their family configuration. One of the reasons why planning for the future is so complex is there are so many variables. And it's important to have professionals that understand that this is not just fill in a questionnaire or, download documents off the internet, legal documents or those types of things. And
Right.
certainly you and I could talk probably for hours about
we could do many many episodes just on that. But what are the most common reasons or some of the common reasons why people reach out to your company for help?
Sure. So we get referrals primarily at some very key times of life. Sometimes it's as early as a newborn that's born with perhaps Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or some other type of disability. And right out of the chute, the entire family is in that shell shock. Oh my gosh, we're going to have a loved one who has got some pretty significant challenges. And so we're worried not only about how are we going to get it all done as a family, but secondarily, what is going to be the related cost to that? And so we can be very helpful. And that's usually a lot of times multi-generational. We may have grandparents that are the ones that reach out to us and say, we want to establish a fund right now to help our grandchild and help our children deal with the challenges that we know are coming because of this child. So sometimes it's very early. More traditionally, it's often at around age 18 during that
Yeah.
transition to adulthood program and that a period of life. And so, in that case, we know that public school benefits are running out. We're now looking at adulthood, which can be a very long period of time. And we have a young person who is going to require some level of support services. And there are going to be some costs. And mom and dad at the same time are anticipating their own retirement, or they may have other children that are in college. They're looking at that whole configuration of what are the funds available? What's our estate plan look like? How do we provide for our own elder care years? How do we get everything done for our family that we would like to get done? And then make sure that we have provided for our loved one that has the special need. We
Okay, so
also,
you're
yeah,
talking about financial things. You've
uh-huh.
been focusing a lot on financial, and you are not a financial planner, but you are a key piece of that financial plan. Describe to us what it is that you can do in that regard.
So our first conversation with the family is to talk through and help them to define what their vision is. So what is it that you really want to accomplish for quality of life? And that becomes very practical. Like who is actually going to provide the care? How much is going to be provided through unpaid family love, time, and energy? What can we accomplish through benefits? So that's very important. At age 18, many benefits no longer have any restriction of income based
Related
on
to
the
the parents.
family, the
Yeah,
parents. It's only based on the individual with the
right.
disability. And then the last piece is that what is the right amount of money that needs to be allocated to achieve whatever that vision is. And so it's a process that we go through and helping get it into an organized format. So we now have directives, and which are also, by the way, extremely helpful if, God forbid, something happens to mom and dad prematurely. We now know anyone could pick up that document and know exactly what it was that this family wanted to accomplish for that individual that has special needs. One of the things we like to say is that that's one of the biggest gifts you can give to the other siblings is to not only describe your vision, but also then provide the funding to accomplish it so that, again, quality of life for everyone in the family is accomplished.
Okay, so I think your company is going to, in that situation, help the family figure out what the care needs, what the needs are for that quality of life, and what that costs
Correct, correct.
in a
So all
realistic, objective way.
exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've done at National Care Advisors is our nurses are very involved in solution finding. So that means we find caregivers. We know what they cost. We advocate to maximize benefits. So we know what the value of third party benefits are. We know what the cost of housing is and all the associated costs of housing. For example, the plumber at 10 o'clock at night when a toilet gets plugged, those kinds of things. We know the very practical aspects of supporting an individual with special needs because that is the main book of business that we provide at National Care Advisors. As a result of that information, when a family and parents define a vision for us, they want their child to live in this community. The child clearly, or the adult child, needs 24/7 support, for example, or even just 12 hours of
Right.
support,
Yeah.
or 4 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, whatever that looks like, whatever that definition looks like. We can, in 2022 dollars, in today's world, in the practical setting, help to define what those real life costs are because it's highly likely. Again, our nurses are in all 50 states. You can't stump us. We know what those costs are. We also know what we should be expecting based on all the different parameters and all the factors, what the benefit value should be for public benefits, Social Security, Medicaid, Medi-Cal, IHSS, regional center, those types of things. And then finally, to drill it down into a number that if you want to accomplish this objective and goal for quality of life, you're going to need to be able to subsidize to a certain amount every month out of private family funds. Um,
Yeah, and that's where the financial planning comes in. If this is the
correct. So then,
goal,
yeah,
then how are we gonna get there? Do you Okay, so you're analyzing the actual objective needs. Do you find, so in the family scenario that we're kind of thinking about here, maybe the child has been living at home with the parents for their whole lifetime. So the parents are the ones providing all of this support. Do you find that parents are sometimes surprised at or just not really aware of how much support they're providing and how much it costs?
Absolutely. And that was the third part time when we get called. And that's when mom and dad are about to retire or their health is starting to fail. And it becomes clearly evident that there's going to need to be successors to take over where mom and dad have left off to continue to care for their loved one. And I would say categorically, I have yet to meet a parent that does not underestimate the value of their services to their child, their adult child with special needs. It is always eye opening. And by the way, it is never just one individual that takes over for a mom or for a dad or for a mom and dad, right? When we have to cost that out, it might be different levels. It might be a case manager who has expertise to assist with benefits management and financial planning. It might be a custodial care aide that can help with the day to day meal prep, bathing,
Yeah.
assistance in the restroom, those kinds of things. It might be, again, someone who's advising a trustee. It might be someone who has to be in a fiduciary capacity to manage day-to-day money, and to serve as the rep for Social Security, because a lot of times trustees do not serve in that
I would want to
capacity.
do that. Yeah.
So depending on who the other professionals are that are involved, we're kind of bringing that. I like to kind of think almost like we're bringing all of the players together a little bit. Sometimes the attorney serves as the quarterback, sometimes it's the financial planner, but I guarantee that if you leave out the practical care management aspects and the value of those parents' time and energy and what they've been doing historically, and now what we need to make sure continues to be done so that that individual has the same quality of life that is described in our vision. That's super, super important.
Yeah, I don't think that it's very common that an attorney or a financial planner can cover what you cover. I think it's a three-legged stool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that we work really well together with attorneys because we have, there's certain, we still find clients that never executed power of attorney documents or guardianship or conservatorship documents
Right.
appropriately at age 18 because they didn't need to. And for
Right.
whatever reason, HIPAA hadn't been an issue in their life. So they've never been to a point where the doctor or the dentist wouldn't talk to them. But
Right.
now, when it comes time for a transition, a true life transition, where mom and dad can no longer serve as that primary care and support person, those documents are so important, and just as important as making sure that we've maximized appropriate third party benefits to make family money stretch further, to go further,
Right.
and also to accomplish other goals. I'm a huge advocate that there should be quality of life for everyone in the family. So we don't like to disinherit siblings. If someone has another
Yeah.
goal for their funds, they want that money to go some other different ways as well. Let's figure out a way to make that work.
Mhm. Yeah.
And not overfund a special needs trust because we never actually analyzed. And we do see quite a bit of that where the funds that are allocated are in an irrevocable special needs trust, and they are way over what that
Oh,
needs to
okay.
be funded.
This child is never gonna need this much money, and
Correct.
you disinherited the siblings in order to accomplish something you didn't need to accomplish. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Now, okay, so speaking of siblings, and making sure there's quality of life for everyone, we're not just talking about financial quality of life, for the siblings, and I'm gonna share with you, well, really with the audience, because this is not a surprise to you, Anne. Um, well over half of the time when a new special needs family comes in, their vision is that the sibling is going to be basically everything. The sibling
Right.
is going to take the place of the parents in their sibling's life. And we have to say, okay, that's interesting. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Can you, Anne, speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so the plan for successors, we kind of have a cute term for that's a dining room table discussion. Certainly, it's important to include the siblings in that discussion and to let them know what that plan is and to make sure that they're on board and their spouse is on board and that they don't have their own triggers or additional stressors in their lives,
Right.
which, again, sometimes, you're the parents who are assuming that the siblings will take over are not fully aware that there may be other stresses on that household, their own children and their issues, perhaps elder care issues from their spouse. There's just a lot on the plate of that successor generation, or career demands, or the fact that they might not stay put and a job might take them across the country.
Mm.
We see that very commonly. And so I would say also that in my experience, we seem to see opposite ends of the spectrum. Either a parent that thinks that the sibling is going to do things exactly as they did, and they're going to welcome their special needs sibling into their home and provide all the hands-on day-to-day care and all the things that mom and dad have managed over their lifetime, or they don't want the siblings to be involved at all. And they don't want to have any expectation of responsibility on the part of the healthy or the typical
Mhm, mhm.
sibling, correct? And so I would have to say that in my experience, after we have our conversation, when we talk to the siblings, the grown adult siblings,
Right.
that they want a role. They
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want the role that mom and dad have played necessarily. They don't want to
Right.
be the one in the bathroom with the individual who has special need. I guarantee that. But
Yes.
they also don't want to not have any role.
Right.
They still love their sibling. They still want to make sure that they have care and appropriate care and quality of life. They may want to include them in holidays and family celebrations and all of those
Yeah.
kinds of things, but with appropriate support. So that
Mhm.
discussion is very, very important. And then again, to allocate, okay, what's our plan to deliver services to supplement and make it so there is less stress on that next generation
Yeah.
as they go forward to carry out mom and dad's vision for care and quality of life for their loved one. So it's usually a combination of hired individuals, so we need some money, third party benefits, which can certainly help to offset. And then in some cases, I would say majority of cases, we ask for serious consideration that at least the sibling or the successor generation, someone from that successor generation, if they're available and willing, would be an advisor to the trustee, so
Mhm.
that the hired professionals that are receiving money to manage all of this actually have some guidance and oversight from someone who has
Yeah.
an emotional attachment to that individual.
Yeah, I think in my experience as well, most of the time, the sibling does wanna be involved. They don't wanna be just shoved off to the side because I mean, we all love our siblings, most of us do.
Sure, 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 sure,
And
sure.
and and so they wanna be involved, and they wanna make sure things are going as they should, and
Correct.
who better than someone who really loves and cares about this person to have a bit of oversight. I think that word is important, to a lot of my families anyway.
Absolutely.
We're saying, "You're gonna have these professionals, and you're gonna pay people out of this bundle of money that we have." Well, often the question I get is, "Well, how do we make sure they're doing a good job?" Well, let's give somebody the opportunity to check that out, somebody who cares and somebody that you trust. So I think that's a really important point that you made, which is let's have that dining room table conversation and figure this out.
Right, right. And I do think that there's also huge merit in not setting up siblings to be beating heads for the rest of all time. We see this, and I'm sure you have as well, where it's, we're naming an Uncle Joe or a brother or sister to be a trustee over funds. And then they're in a position that every holiday there's a discussion of are the funds being used appropriately? Does that family member know what they're doing in administering a special needs trust relative to preservation of benefits and following some of the law that's available? And so it's tempting to say that a corporate trustee is not the best way to go because, of course, you have to pay for it and there's a stranger. On the other hand, I would say that some of the biggest problems that we help families work through is moving from a family member being the trustee who's resigned or who has had a problem because they didn't know what they were doing. And we have to move that trust over to a corporate trustee in a crisis, as opposed to doing it with a solid plan.
With a plan, yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of family members serving as special needs trustees without lots and lots of professional advisors around them to support. Or again, there's a lot of little nuances there for sure, as you can talk about.
There is always reluctance with hiring professionals about the money. They cost money. My cousin, my child would do it for free. Well, they cost money, but the person who's a family member doing it for free requires so much professional support that really, I'm not sure you save any money by having a family member serve in these important roles. So I am with you. I am an advocate of, let's have professionals in the appropriate positions and have the family members advising and having a say, having some oversight. I think in the long run, it's financially responsible to do that as well.
Yeah, some of our most challenging cases is where a trust has been depleted because a family trustee didn't understand and didn't know that the value of some third-party benefits that could have supplemented the custodial care support, that 24/7, the home health aid support, which is always the largest cost. And we've got lots of years of life left, and we don't have a whole lot of money left in that special needs trust anymore because it was mismanaged. And those are sad to me very much because we could have avoided and certainly helped those dollars to stretch over lifetime. If we'd had a trustee that understood the value of those benefits and that they even existed or that they could go after them.
Right.
And so that's very important to us. And just understanding too things like run rate. The financial planner becomes very important as well, I have to say. Making sure that you're looking at an annual run rate. Is the expenditure plan sustainable? And then finding good solutions. So finding caregivers, that's one of the things that we like to focus on at National Care Advisors is finding the solutions to problems. That's what our nurses and our education consultants do every day, all day long. Number one request is, can you find me reliable, qualified caregivers that we want to have in our home? That's number one. Number two is, I don't think I'm getting full benefit out of my Medi-Cal or my IHSS or my regional center benefits. Can you help me and advocate for that to get more from those services? The third is, we want to do something that's kind of out of the ordinary. We'd like to take a vacation, but our loved one's in a wheelchair and requires some other equipment. How can we do that?
Interesting.
And we have helped folks go all over the world, regardless of their special need. It might be, I don't want to interrupt Christmas when my loved one gets tired in the middle of the celebration, I would like to have some help for someone who could just take them back so they could rest, or they could go home a little early, but we don't have to interrupt the entire celebration. We've got an appropriate caregiver to assist us with that. It might be transition when it's time to no longer live in a family home, and we want to find the best solution, whether that's a supported community, a private small group home, setting up where the parents or the family might own the home, but we're using some public benefits to help offset the cost of the supportive care that's required. So there's a lot of really creative things, and that sometimes that's how we get our call, is that there's a problem and it needs to be solved, and it needs to be solved right away. And then we go into, okay, now let's talk about what does the future look like over the timeline of life.
Yeah. Now, you and I have talked a little bit about a couple of other interesting areas that you sometimes get pulled into. One of the examples is when there's a divorce happening in a family that has a special needs child, you can be very helpful in informing the decisions that are being made in the divorce process. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in a divorce situation that involves either a spouse that may have a health issue or a challenge, or a child that is product of the marriage that has a special need, we are often retained to assist with what are the future care costs and the private dollar costs relative to the standard of living that would have otherwise been accomplished through this marital situation and then the pending divorce. And we work very closely with not only the divorce attorney, but we usually will bring in a special needs attorney as well. And we would recommend that so that any, for example, alimony or child support
Right.
or other types of division of assets might make sense to go to a special needs trust for that individual so that we don't lose access to our Medi-Cal or to in-home support services or some other things, because inadvertently we now have an income stream that will interfere
Right.
with that.
Right.
And we have found that even though, all things are negotiable, certainly there are some laws, of course, in divorce law about how all of these things happen. But we have absolutely had situations where child support continued beyond age 18 or
18,
whatever the
yeah.
law says, right? You can help me with that, Kirsten. We've also seen that there might not be an equal 50-50 distribution if we have a spouse that has a significant physical disability, and so, or physical or mental or any other type of disability, for example.
Sure.
So that there's more consideration given to the individual who requires more
Yeah.
more resources, right?
So
And
yeah,
it's a
again, it's
constant
all
effort.
about reducing the need to dollars so that you can talk about, okay, we have this many dollars. How are we going to do this?
Right. And
Yeah.
it's not funny money. These are practical, real life
Yeah.
costs. Oftentimes, I've had a little bit of experience with depositions and trials,
That's
and it's
right.
always interesting because it's like, okay, where are we wrong? What are the line items that are not real life? There are certain things that have to be covered. Those are expenses of living, and when you start to do that, you can begin to resolve the conflict because it stands the test of common sense. And that's really what we're all about, and this the test of reasonableness. So that's the approach, a very pragmatic approach to special needs planning, no matter what the particular dilemma is at the moment. And looking at, again, my crystal ball is pretty good for the next 12 months, but after 12 months, it gets a little bit cloudy. And at that point, what we were going to recommend that, we review things at least annually to give updates because of the variables and the dynamic process that's
Yeah.
involved in special needs planning.
Okay. I want to turn to some of our viewer questions. And just for those of you who are watching us live, you can type a question into the comment section on whatever platform you're watching. If you're watching us on a video, a recording, sorry, can't answer your questions, but watch us live again next time. Okay, so I have a viewer who wants to know talk more about some of the options available for housing young adults who are not capable of living independently, but for whatever reason aren't going to be living with their parents.
Sure.
Because you
So,
mentioned some more creative options, and I think that's very intriguing.
yeah, I wish there was an easy solution. As we all know, there is a shortage of quality supported housing throughout the United States, not just California. It's everywhere. There's a lot of different options, and so we certainly start with, if here in California, with things that are supported by the regional center. So where are the group homes? What is the quality? What neighborhood are they located in? What's the roommate situation or the housemate situation? And is that consistent with mom and dad's vision for care and quality of life? Once we've exhausted that, perhaps the public government setting is not consistent with what mom and dad want to accomplish for their child, then we start to look at private communities. And they do exist. They can be very expensive, although sometimes not so expensive. And in some cases, we also look to the successors. So are we going to stay in California or are we going to move? What are we looking at? Do we want to do a national search, or do we really want to stay, like, for example, just in the Bay Area, where I can tell you right now, having just done a search recently, there's not a lot of open beds out there, because remember, individuals with special needs don't necessarily have a shorter lifespan. So it's not the same as elder care, where beds come up on a regular basis. In the special needs arena, these are lifelong,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
housing solutions, right?
Yeah. It can be decades. Yeah.
Exactly. So then we kind of take a look: is our mom and dad in a position to be able to provide the housing? Can we then coordinate with a regional center, perhaps to share costs with an appropriate roommate of the parents, where the parents can kind of, and the individual client can perhaps be involved in that discussion of finding the right housemate or roommate? Can we share some costs for the custodial care that's required, the supervision, the maintenance, all of those kinds of things? And we kind of call that a private-public consortium, and putting those together. That requires, there's a lot of legal considerations and
Oh,
risk
sure.
considerations when you do that. And so we certainly want to make sure that we have an attorney involved that can help
Yeah.
us make sure that everyone's protected and that the ownership of the home is protected. And again, there may be some things we want to keep that home outside of the realm of anything that could be attached by our friends at Medi-Cal, those kinds of things. So
Right. Right. Right.
um, in any case, there are some interesting solutions out there, but it's a challenge. And so
Mhm.
what we like to do is to make sure that we've done all the research, that we've looked at all the possible options, and that mom and dad, or whoever, whatever the family is that's endeavoring to make that transition plan, to figure it out, that you have all the information you need so that you can make educated decisions, and that we're making long-term decisions that are sustainable within the scope of the family resources. That in 9 times out of 10, at least in my world, you're not going to get it done to the care and quality that you would like just with government benefits.
Right.
Sometimes we look out, sometimes not.
Yeah. 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 That's a very important point, and that's where the financial planner comes in to play. We got to figure out a way to come up with more money.
Again, we're back to that, the three
The
disciplines,
three-legged stool.
essential. It just keeps resonating over and over again.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. I know the answer to this question, I think, but a listener posed it. Does your company serve as trustee of special needs trusts?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We are nurses and education consultants, and we don't serve as trustees. We don't serve as conservators, or fiduciaries. We don't manage money in any way, shape, or form. We help people find really good partners to do that. And certainly, we certainly guide parents as they're interviewing partners to make sure that it's the right match, and that everybody's on the same page, and that there's a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach.
Mm.
But no, we don't serve
Yeah.
in that capacity. We do, however, often, our goal is to get in, solve the problem, get back out again. We don't want to be yet another drain on resources.
Sure.
However, we certainly have families that, we will have helped them, and then a couple of years later, something changes with a benefit, or someone in the family becomes ill and they can't do what they were doing before, or there's a particular request of the trustee and there's a lot, it needs to be kind of solved. And so we jump back in again. And so we do have
Mhm.
lifelong relationships with families, but we like to be always very cost conscious, that we're actually have a deliverable that is of huge benefit to the situation and not just a
Sure.
drain. Um,
Uh, yeah.
we're- yeah.
I've got another one. Can can you help families that are I'm going to use that a different word, struggling with the educational system and their special needs?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you do in that space?
Okay. We have master's prepared educational consultants on staff here at National Care Advisors that are awesome. I can't even tell you how good they are. And they're super knowledgeable regarding the federal laws and all of the benefits that are mandated for individual students with special needs of all different kinds, whether it's a physical disability, an emotional disability, a mental disability, developmental disability, doesn't matter, right? Our education consultants certainly are available to review IEPs. They can attend IEP meetings, which even just the mere presence of their attendance will make a difference in the tone of that meeting. They will support parents in the reasonable requests for modifications, and benefits through the IEP program. They're very helpful in making sure everyone's on the same page. Of course, the services have to be focused on education. So there are some things, there's an educational process that as well. But we like to pride ourselves that we really do solve a lot of problems, whether it's supportive care on a bus ride, whether it's a one-to-one in the classroom, whether it's an IEP that's actually focused on the real abilities of that student and not just putting them into the box with a curriculum, and making sure they have therapies that are appropriate. In some school districts that are struggling with money, we sometimes will negotiate, like if there's just no money there, and you can't get blood out of a stone. We have, made some negotiations where, maybe if they'll provide the speech therapist, we'll provide the piece of equipment or vice versa, right? There's sometimes that happens. In some instances, we've been able to negotiate where the public school just cannot meet the educational needs of that child. We've been able to negotiate that the dollars follow the child to a private school.
Private school, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
And that takes a lot. You've got to prove that the public school cannot meet the educational needs. But yes, we do use attorneys when we need them. Like if we truly run into a wall and that school is not following the law, our education consultants are the first to say, yeah, we got to have an attorney here. Yeah. But one of our goals is to maintain a positive relationship. Remember that family has to have probably a 12 or 13 year or even more, 14, 15 year relation, depending on the siblings, relationship with that community public school. Right. We don't want to be doing this for the rest of all time. We want to get on the same page, have positive interactions, and not have it be so painful every year to establish and review that IEP, individualized education plan.
I think that's such an important thing, because I don't think parents, as a general rule, have a real clear understanding of what they should be asking for, what they could be asking for, what are the possibilities, what is this school required to provide, and your creativity in finding workarounds when there just really isn't the money, but we still have the need. I think that's fantastic that you're able to help in that realm too.
And sometimes just little things. For example, we've had school districts who give a parent less than a day's notice and want them to appear at an IEP meeting in the middle of the workday. And, and then say, well, if you can't make that, then we're, it's like there's no rescheduling. Well, that's illegal, first of all. Secondly, we've had some school districts who won't provide the IEP document proactively. So the parent could have reviewed it prior to the meeting. And then they want them to sign at the meeting. And they give quite a bit of pressure if they don't do that. And I can tell you that if our consultant's involved, none of that nonsense.
That's not happening.
None of that nonsense.
None of that shenanigans. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times, all of a sudden, we have principals and superintendents attend the IEP meeting when our consultant's present. Yeah. And it stops the staff from doing some of the things that, maybe are not best practice. And understanding, though, too, we want to be efficient in that. We all have to be efficient. Those school district has lots of special needs children. Sure. They can't have 4-hour IEP meetings. We need to figure out a way to come to conclusion and resolution in a professional, timely manner.
Yeah, great. Okay. Let me scroll and make sure. I think that's the end of my questions here. All right. Well, thank you, Anne, so much. This has been hugely informative, and I'm sure the audience will agree with me. My guest has been Anne Kerner of National Care Advisors, and I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Kirsten, for the invitation. It's been a pleasure.
All right. And thank you all for listening and watching. If you're watching, we always appreciate our audience, and I look forward to connecting with you next time.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcounsel.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.